I really wanted to talk more about Despicable Me because when we had lunch one day, you just casually mentioned that you were the producer of this movie and you found it and you pitched it. I want to really dive into how you even found this idea.
I met this Spanish artist. He's like one of the top animators in the world. Anyway, so he showed me a few of these projects that he was developing, and he had like four projects that were really solid, cool, and but one of them was just like that one is insane and amazing, and that was Despicable Me. I was like, we got to just go and pitch this.
I am so excited to introduce to you an amazing guest. Her name is Nina Rappaport Rowan, and I can't wait for you to hear more about her story. Hi, Nina. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing so well. I wanted to kick it off and ask you, do you remember the first time we met and talk a little bit more about that moment when we first met?
How could I forget the first time we met? Because it was love at first sight.
I love it. I love it.
So we met on a project that I was hired to be a producer on. And you were the client. And it was a really fun spot for Google, an internal facing video. Really fun actors, great crew, just totally well put together. And I was sort of pinch hitting, like they needed a producer, and it was the first time I was actually ever working with this crew. So I was a little nervous. Like it's always, you get nervous when you're like you've never worked with anyone before. So anyway, it was just great fun, and we met, and it was like we were just like magnets to each other. It was just, you know how that happens with people. Like there's a chemistry that you cannot explain. And I think that was the initial thing. It was just like, zoop. And then we just, you know, totally connected on food. We were like food, 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 and you were gonna take me to the best food on campus. And then we were just talking about how we had to go out and get this amazing Thai food that you knew about, and then we started really getting personal, and it was really cool. Like it was like we were definitely like telling each other secrets and it felt safe. And I it's very rare to have such a strong instant connection for me with people that I would feel so safe in like telling like, secrets to. So I felt there was a very like a sister vibe happening. So
Absolutely. I feel the same way. When I first met you, you had this energy about you that was also very safe, but you were just so cool. I remember you telling me about all of your stories and like amazing projects you had worked on. But beyond that, there was just this energy about you that you had that was so positive and so warm and so loving that it made sense to me why we connected so quickly. And yes, we bonded over food. You were just fantastic to work with on that project. And, what I see in you is what I want others to hear about and see and learn more about your story because, you have so many insights that can be shared with people. And I want people to hear about it. So I'm excited to have you on, hand me the mic. And I just want to ask you more about you, growing up. I'd love to hear what were you like as a kid and what was your upbringing like?
so I was a middle child. Um that brings many things to the table. But what's interesting about me being a middle child is that I later in life feel like I assumed more of the oldest sibling position, even though I wasn't. Um, and that's sort of how it went down for the rest of, growing up. But I had the best childhood, like honestly. I feel like what definitely needs to be said is how important it is as a parent to instill confidence in your children because if they have that, they will get to where they need to go. And my parents did that in spades for me. My parents made me feel like I was the best at everything, even if I sucked at it. I was like, the best cello player. I was the best artist. I was the best this, that. And I was terrible at all of it, really. But they made me feel like I can do anything. And anything I wanted to do, they encouraged me to do and they supported me. And it's such a building block for my life. And I hope that lots of people hear this as parents because I certainly have done that for my child. I know how important it is to have confidence. So,
And I see that within you as well, too. You mentioned how supportive your parents were. I see that in you when you talk to others. You're extremely supportive. I remember telling you about some of my passions and my career ambitions, and you were just like, "You got to do it." And I was like, "Wait, what?" You're like, "Just do it." So it's so beautiful that that same kind of experience that you had growing up really translated to who you are as a person. You do that for others. So I love that that was a very pivotal, moment for you as a child, and it gave you this confidence to do all these big things, which this is coming up to some of these questions, but I want to know more about this passion and love for filmmaking. Where did that happen and when did that start?
um, I mean, I always love movies. Like that goes without saying. I went to college at SUNY Purchase, which is an art school in New York, a state art school. I didn't study film. I studied art history. When I graduated college, I had absolutely no idea what I was gonna do. I was like, "I'm not gonna work in a museum." That was, to me, super boring and no way. And back in the day, this is long before you were born, there used to be, like, things called newspaper, and there are classified sections where you could, like, search for a job. And so I found this job and circled it. It was like a receptionist at a animation studio and thought, I love cartoons. Hey, that sounds fun. And so got that job and then it was like it pay the rest is history, right? So I had to figure out, okay, what is this industry? Who do I want to be? How do I fit into it? What excites me? What do I feel like I could be good at? Um, I will say to this day, being a receptionist was like one of the most fun experiences I've ever had because you're, like, in control of everything, right? You're like, "Sure, I could let you into that," or I could, hang up on you, or you know what I mean? It was just like you had so much control over how the day was gonna go, so that was really fun. But what I noticed very quickly at that job was that I loved connecting dots. I was a dot connector. Like, I saw something really cool, I met someone really cool, I put those things together and something would happen. And that's pretty much what producing is, right? So I sort of gravitated down that path, being an assistant producer and then a producer and then executive producer. Like it was really like it came so natural to me. I feel like I have a pretty good sense of like, high quality, and that's very important to me. That definitely came from my dad. Um, so I was really good at like putting the puzzle pieces together and then, like, delivering, like, something wonderful because of it. So, that is sort of how it unraveled. It was never, "Oh, I had a plan." It was I fell into it, right? And I think that's another thing to really, talk to young people about because you don't have to have a plan. You can study whatever you want and use that time to, like, just sponge everything that you learn, right? And be excited and open. You don't have to have a plan, because once you graduate, you'll meet a person or you'll be in a place and, like, something will happen, and then your path will suddenly reveal itself. So, I think I wish that people would understand that more, that, like, I get it, you go to school, you're gonna be a lawyer or a doctor, that makes sense. You have to have, like, a road that you must travel on, but everyone else, it's like, just enjoy it. Enjoy the ride, right? You're gonna find out where you belong based on how and what makes your heart beat, right? That's like, if you get excited and you feel your heart beating and you're like, "I like this. I like them. I like whatever," that's the path. That's the one you go, "Okay, I'm gonna go down there. This feels good. This feels right." Intuition, gut, all of that stuff.
I want to circle back to when you first found this passion for video and filmmaking. And, you worked for a bunch of different companies and then you decided to do your own thing and start your own company and business. I wanted to ask what got you to that decision? What led you to this? And I want to hear more about that experience for those who are thinking about starting their own things, but maybe too timid and scared. I'd love to hear more about what got you there.
Yeah. Well, at the end of my job, I was an executive producer at an animation company in San Francisco, and I was at the 6-year mark, ready to fly. I really had a good, hard thought about, like, what am I getting from this? I was like, why am I developing all of these cool things for somebody else? I'm not really getting much from it, right? Like, I get a good salary, some benefits, but like I don't get anything more, right? Like, everything else goes to this company and the founders and the owners of this company. And I was like, this seems crazy. Like, why don't I just do it for myself? Like, I could just do it. Why am I doing it for them if I could just do it for me? And that is really the mindset that I had. I was like, I'm going to try. Like, why not? Right. And it wasn't like, should I try? It wasn't like that at all. It was like, why am I doing this? And so I I left and I just decided to go out on my own and realized pretty quickly that actually being at a company, it was harder to get things off the ground, because a lot of times when you go and you pitch projects, the studios, they don't want the company, they want the idea. And they don't want all of the stuff that is like, attached to the idea. They want a free and clear idea, right? So it was actually easier to develop projects and pitch projects and sell projects when I left the company. And I had no idea about that at the time, but it was something that I learned very quickly. So 6 months after I did that is when I found Despicable Me, and the rest is history, right? Like, I found it, I pitched it, I sold it. It went so fast. It was definitely a perfect storm. I'm not going to say that this is something that happens often, right? It was like a wild moment in time where every single thing kind of like connected at just the right time. And so that was an incredible thing, right? Because I sold this really successful project, which then became a great calling card for me. So now I could just pick up the phone, email anybody and say, I'm the producer of Despicable Me, and people will take a phone call or a meeting or whatever. So it was fantastic. But then it also allowed me to invest in myself, because that's when I started the Kimochi's company. So again, it's like just having the confidence to say to yourself, why can't I just do it? Right? Like, that was the question I proposed to myself. Why can't I just do it? And the answer is you can, right? You just have to do it. You have to just make the decision and go, because you know what to do. It's not like you're going to have to figure that piece out. You already know what to do. You know how to do your job. And so like so now you're like in this world where you're just like benefiting from it, right? Like you're not just working for the man, as they say, you're like working for you. And what better incentive is there to just like blow things up than to know that you're working for you, right?
I
So
wanted I love this. I really wanted to talk more about Despicable Me because when we had lunch one day, you just casually mentioned that you found this basically you were the producer of this movie and you found it and you pitched it and I was like shocked because well first I'm not shocked because you are brilliant, but it's just such a huge amazing accomplishment and I want to hear more about I can't believe 6 months into your new business that you found this incredible project that would later on become this international, worldwide hit, receiving two, Oscars, Academy Award nominations. It's just an incredible story. How did you, at the 6-month mark, find this idea? I want to talk more about this. What was that like? And were you met with rejections and challenges? I want to really dive into how you even found this idea and how you moved through and pitched it successfully. I want to hear more about that.
So, I found the project because at the time I was working on a book series for Simon and Schuster, and it was a really cool series. It was called Truck Town, and a friend of mine who is an illustrator recommended me as a producer because what they wanted to do was use sort of the animation model to produce the illustrations, because there was like 40 books and they couldn't just like do their typical an artist to illustrate. They had to have a team of people illustrating this enormous amount of content. So they hired me, and I had to find the right studio to produce the art. And so I found a studio through a friend who recommended this studio in Spain. And I met this Spanish artist, and, we got to talking. What are you doing? What's that? Like, it was super talented. He used to be like an incredible Disney character designer animator. He's like one of the top animators in the world. Anyway, so he showed me a few of these projects that he was developing, and he had like 4 projects that were really solid, cool, but one of them was just like, that one is insane and amazing, and that was Despicable Me. At the time it was called Evil Me. And so he had this beautiful presentation book with illustrations and a little bit of an outline for the story, and I was like, we got to just go and pitch this. Like this, let's pitch a few of these ideas and let's go. So I set up meetings in LA, at all the studios. I went to Chris Meledandri first, who is the executive in charge of Illumination Entertainment, who does all of Universal's big animated feature films. And I knew him because I had a relationship with him at Blue Sky when he was at Fox. So I always bring stuff to him first just because of the relationship. So he had just moved over to Universal at the time, and he was looking for his first project, and time was ticking. He was like, in a situation where he had to like find a really great project. And so like, here I came with Sergio, and we had this breakfast with him in LA, and he was just like looking through the book, and I could see it was like, oh, he was just like it was clear that he was really interested in this project. But then you're like, okay, are you really, because like you're in Hollywood and you say you're interested, and I also had all these other meetings set up. He was just the first meeting. And so, I had been hyping this project to all of these different places and people. And anyway, so at the end of the breakfast, by the time I got to the car in the parking lot, he probably called me 3 times because he was just like so serious about wanting the project, and he just didn't want me to pitch it to anyone else. Like, he was like, I want this. I'm going to make a big movie. It's going to be my first movie. I'm going to spend $65 million. Like, he was just like, that like hypno wheel. I was like, like, of course, not trusting a word of it because everyone says they're going to do everything. But I was like, it's weird. He keeps calling me from the parking lot. Like, he's definitely, something's up here. I've never had this happen before, like I'll give you a call next week. Sure. Right. But not this. This level was like intense. So I had to make this decision, and whether or not to pitch the project to the other studios. And I was like, I'm just going to pull it off the table and not pitch it. And it was so embarrassing then, now going to all these different meetings and not having like the star project to pitch. And anyway, long story short, he ended up doing every single thing that he said he was going to do. So it was the right decision, right? Now, I had to make that decision, right? It's like going back to like making the decision and not spinning and, messing things up because you can't and you're afraid and you're fearful of this and that. I was like, trust your gut. What is it telling you? And it was the best thing I ever did. It was like, I mean, not that the best project I ever did, but it's like, the best decision I made because it just opened the doors to so many other things that happened in my life. So it was pretty cool. That was like
I love that.
a needle in a haystack, right? But it happened and for me, it just, like I said, it just made it very possible to open more doors because of it. And still today, I'm just like, I could just go anywhere. So you got to make decisions and you got to be confident and you got to trust yourself. All of these things have to be working together, right? And feel it. You got to feel it in your gut. You go, this feels right. It might be a little scary, but it feels right. So,
Absolutely. I love that story. That's incredibly inspirational. I want to talk about some of the challenges because what I really admire about you is this theme that you have of just this fearlessness of, hey, you basically quit, working with these companies where you're getting a salary and you're like, I'm just gonna do my own thing. There's a fearlessness there. There's a fearlessness in pitching this amazing story that would become a huge hit later on with Despicable Me. There's so many elements of that throughout your life. I'm curious, were there any moments of doubt along the way for you? And maybe a time where you didn't necessarily listen to your gut? I think, you know, speaking for myself, there's been so many moments where I have doubted myself or maybe not listened to my intuition, and that's led me astray. But I'm curious, were there moments like that for you along the way? And how did you pick yourself back up again? And how did you navigate through those moments?
I mean, I would say one of the hardest things that ever happened to me career wise was the end of Komochi's for me. Like not that it's over, it's still a company and it's still in the world and doing good. But because it was a startup, it was like, a very classic tale of like a startup that ran out of money. And when that happens, you know, it's typical the CEO has to go and things have to change and whatever. So that happened for me. I created this beautiful line of toys and it was like working and helping people and doing well in retail and like, it was really like on a great track. Um and but I didn't have enough money to fund it, just and I didn't have the experience to know what to do before the iceberg hit, before the Titanic happened, like, oh, going close to the iceberg, and that was hard, that was really hard to be like pushed out of a company that was so personal, to me, like all these like characters are my family member, like they're all based on like everything that's personal to me. And it still triggers me. Like I'm not ever probably going to get over it. It's like it was a really, really hard and devastating thing to happen. What would I have done differently? Definitely would have made lots of different choices. Like looking back at it, like what happened, right? Um, and I think it's really like being able to like cut things before it's too late. Like, like I should have gotten rid of staff. I should like there's just things that were like just financial things that could have been done, but I didn't want to lose anybody. I didn't want people to not have jobs. You know what I mean? It was like so intense. Um but it was just too late, and the iceberg hit, and that was that. So that was really, really hard. Um, I don't think I would ever do something like that again. Like, I don't have that like desire to get investors on board with something that I have, unless it was like maybe one who we were partners and that was something. But I would never do that again. Like, it's just the loss is too great.
How did you get through that period of time? Because I imagine where it's something so personal to you, starting this whole company and seeing it do well, and then eventually it's just having it. The company has to stop running. How did you get through that period?
It was hard. Um, I was very lucky because I sort of landed on a cushion almost, right? Like, it was just really, I would say, almost auspicious timing. But a friend of mine had an opening for a producer, like an internal producer at Charles Schwab, which is a financial company. They were looking for an internal producer for their creative services, and I was like, me, right? I had to like jump in because I had to like fill my brain with something other than what was going on. And that really saved me. You know what I mean? It was just like I just was suddenly like in a totally new place, totally new people, doing totally different things. And um, so I did that for a year, which is great. And I continue to work with Schwab as a vendor, which has been, I mean, they're the best client like I've ever had. They're just the best people to work with. I've been working with them for over 15 years. Um, but yeah, I was lucky to land on that cushion, and like it just made my brain have to like, took my brain away from Komochi's, which I was obsessed with. You know what I mean? Like every day it was like how much sales, like, it's like, it's an absolute crazy making thing when you start a company that like you have to sell things with, right? You're just every day you're checking your email 60 times a day because things are happening all the time. And suddenly it was like, whoosh, like I was in a desert, you know? It was so trippy. So that was really, really drastic change. But also realized how messed up it was. Like that I was so obsessed and stressed, and like all of that stuff was like all consuming. And so that was unhealthy. That was definitely unhealthy. And I don't ever want to be like that ever again. Like that was like, been there, tried it, done it, not doing it again. Um, yeah, but that was hard. That was hard. But like I bounce, right? So it's like, okay, that sucked, right? It's not I'm like I describe myself as like a punching clown. You know what I mean? Like you can knock me down, but I'm just gonna go, whoop, here I come, right back up again. And I would never let anything stop me. So
I love that. I love that. What are you most proud of? You mentioned that connecting the dots is something in your life that you just are really, really good at. So looking back on your life and connecting some of these dots from when you were younger to this amazing career you've built to now, what are you most proud of in your life? It can be both professional or personal. Like, I'm just curious to hear, what are you most proud of?
um I think about that a lot. And it's 100% clear what I'm most proud of. Like, I can look at all of the things that have happened in my life. Of course, having a child for me was like the number one thing to ever happen, but that's an obvious thing. I would say, like, if I'm like entering the pearly gates, right? If there are any, um, and like the reason that I would be accepted is because of my joy and willingness to mentor young people. I have done it my entire life, mostly with women. Not that I chose that, that just happened to be the case. It felt like, that they needed it the most. But being able to be there for like several young women and still doing it, like never going to stop doing that. Um, it brought me the most joy. It made me feel like I was doing a service that really mattered, you know? Like all this stuff, who cares in the end? You know what I mean? It's just like, whatever. It's a movie. It's a this and that. It makes, it's nothing. It is absolutely nothing. But like to be able to like really help someone along the way, there's nothing better than that. Nothing.
I love that. I mean, you've been an incredible mentor to me and friend. And I remember in my moments of doubt, you would always be there to champion me and remind me of who I am and what I can do. So it's in your spirit, it's who you are. And I see the impact that you make just even through speaking with me. And so I'm incredibly grateful for you. And I love that that is your legacy as well and what you're most proud of.
Really.
Speaking about these young women, again, like for someone who has maybe a passion that they're a little too scared to move on, or if they're stuck somewhere in their careers, like what would you tell them?
You know, I like to tell people when they're struggling, like, what's the worst thing that can happen? Like, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the absolute most worst thing that can happen. And so then you talk about it, and then you're like, can you live with that? Right? So, like, let's say that happens. Can you live with it? And like, of course I can live with it. So then there's no problem, right? So you know what the worst thing that can happen is. Now you can focus on all of the best things that could happen, right? Because that's where you've got to just like train your brain to go positive. Um, I think that's a really important piece of knowledge to give to young people is like how do you master positive self-talk, right? It's like it's so important, even if you're not feeling it, like you just have to keep practicing because it's like a muscle, it's like you keep getting better and better and better at it, and then suddenly you're just like changing the way your brain is firing, right? You're like, I'm now thinking this way instead of this way, and it works. So yeah, that's it's that positive self-talk that I think if everyone could just do it, if everyone could just remember, you know, that's the gift for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you too. Like I know, it's a almost daily reminder for myself. It's so easy to kind of get sucked up into that negative thinking or from our past and experiences, but it's that continual constant reminding of ourselves of how powerful, positive words of affirmation can be. So thank you for that reminder.
Yeah,
Last
and like one just let's talk about you for a second, right? I mean, look what you're doing. And it took you a long time to say, I'm dipping that toe in. It's like you get to a point where you're like, my body won't let me stop, right? I have got to do it. It's like there's nothing that can stop you. And then everyone has their own schedule for how it happens. The most important thing is that it does happen. So kudos to you and your beautiful little set and your podcast and all of the things that you're doing because this is your path and you're forging your path right now.
Thank you so much. This is why I love Nina. She is the perfect guest to be here on this podcast. And I just can't thank you enough for your generosity, for sharing your stories, for being really honest with us, because I know if I've been touched by them and I've learned from them, I know so many other women out there, so many other individuals will be inspired by your story too. So thank you so much, Nina. I can't wait to get you back on again one day, but thank you so much for your time.
You are so, it's absolute joy to be with you anytime, anywhere. So you just call on me when you need me.
Thank you, Nina. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.